Can you imagine a situation where Ferrari make a collaboration with Dacia and people queue up in line hoping for a low-cost Dacia Ferrari, and then they reveal that it's a hubcap? Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the AP Swatch pocket watch. Scratch that? No, it's not a pocket watch. It's an accessory. And that's something I'm also going to talk about. The Audemars Piguet and Swatch collab is genius, but not because it's going to sell a whole lot of watches. It's because if the high-end luxury watch industry wants to continue to sell watches in the future, then this kind of collaboration has to happen. It doesn't matter that it's a pocket watch. It's vital for the industry. And this is the explanation why. A couple of years back, everybody had a collective meltdown when Swatch and Omega launched the Moon Swatch, a bio-ceramic swatch which looked like the Speedmaster. People stood in line for hours on end to get a hold of those watches, and they are credited not only for picking up the sales of Swatch, but also leading people to buy more Moon watches. At the time, critics thought that it would hurt Omega as a brand, but it turned out it just didn't seem to be the case. Omega and Swatch both came out on top because of this collab. Since then, Swatch have also done a collaboration with Blancpain, which, although interesting, has not had the same level of success as the Moon Swatch. There were 4 reasons for that. First of all, Blancpain just doesn't have the pull of Omega and the Speed watch. 2, it was a great deal more expensive than the Moon Swatch collab, which I think turned off a whole lot of people. System 51, movement regardless. It wasn't novel anymore as a concept. And lastly, the design just wasn't as good or as compelling as the Speedy watch. It wasn't new, it was just the same, but different. And since then, Swatch have basically been churning out new Speedy variants on a regular basis, trying to keep the interest up, but the overall trajectory has been a decline in interest. Now we have the AP collab. The former CEO of AP was a big fan of the Swatch collab with Omega, and he has for a long time expressed interest in wanting to do a similar sort of collab. Ilaria Resta, the new CEO of AP, has also stated several times that the watch industry, especially the high end, is failing to connect with women and with young people. And that tells you a whole lot about why this is happening. As for me and my channel, I'm not bioceramic. This channel is 100% grade A watch nerd. Do you know what's not cool? Not being subscribed to this channel. Do you want to continue your life not being cool? Of course not. Subscribe now. Thanks. The first question we ask ourselves is, how will this collab do? Are we going to see lines outside of the door like we did with the Moon Swatch? The short answer is yes, and the initial cues seem to confirm this. It's going to do much better than the Blancpain, but I do have some caveats compared to the Moon Swatch. The simple fact is that Audemars Piguet is going to make a lot of people go absolutely mental. Why? Because it's AP. It's the Royal Oak Company. It's the brand that has watches that Rick Ross owns and Cactus Jack and all sorts of other popular contemporary celebrities. A Swatch collab with Moser, FP Journe or Vacheron Constantin would not get the broad public as excited. But Rolex, Patek, AP, they will. Is it going to do as well as the Moon Swatch over time? If it were released back then yes. But the world is in a different place right now. Money is tighter. The world is a less secure place. We're more worried about gas prices, and we're not bored out of our minds because of COVID lockdowns. I think all those things are going to temper the overall enthusiasm a little bit, as will the fact that we've seen this before. More importantly though, this isn't a wristwatch. If you make the assumption that this is a pocket watch, then you are automatically going to assume to some degree that it won't be as popular, simply because watch nerds were dreaming of owning a cheap Royal Oak wristwatch. But it's not a pocket watch either. What it is a cultural happening. It's a Tamagotchi, it's a Labubu, it's a fashion item. When you put that lens on, then you know this is something that's going to do well. I seriously doubt that it'll be as long-lived as the Moon Swatch for that specific reason. Happenings like Tamagotchis and Labubus die quicker than products that in and of themselves are strong. I'm also fairly convinced that there is a time limit on how long AP will allow Swatch to sell this design. I just don't see a scenario where AP have signed away the rights to use AP shapes and iconography in perpetuity. There's a limit to this collab between two companies that are not in the same conglomerate. But because it's a happening and not a watch, it's going to be popular with a different kind of person. And of course, some watch nerds will want one, but this is targeted at women. I already know that my 10-year-old daughter saw it and thought it would be fun to have hanging on her bag. It's going to be popular with younger people, and it's going to be popular with people who want accessories. Beyond the commercial implications, the question is it a good idea? For Swatch, absolutely. There's no question, no doubt, unequivocally. Swatch is one of the last big name affordable watchmakers in the Swiss watch industry. Everything at this kind of price point is dominated by Casio and Citizen and Orient and an ocean of non-Swiss brands. Swatch has been able to maintain their position because unlike those foreign brands, Swatch is about plastic toy watches and not grown-up watches. It's a niche that they almost have for themselves. And it's a little bit of a niche that dies without hype. Swatch, when it originally launched last century, came into being as a commercial counter-reaction to the quartz crisis on the one hand, and the stuffiness and old-fashioned nature of the Swiss watch industry on the other. People sometimes like to believe that the Moon Swatch was a new approach for Swatch, but it really wasn't. Swatch has always lived and has always needed a hype moment every now and again to stay relevant. Swatch needs hype on a regular basis to get a surge of people into those stores. And if not, a brand which is predicated on novelty and frivolous spending just kind of dies. So it's a complete no-brainer for Swatch. Is it a good idea for AP? Yes, yes, and yebo yes, but not for the reason you think. AP doesn't need Swatch to move more Royal Oaks. AP are among the most desirable brands on the planet. They are among the most profitable brands on the planet. And they are among the most expensive luxury watch brands on the planet. AP doesn't need foot traffic from the Swatch store to the AP stores. AP's not having a hard time moving those Royal Oaks. And honestly, I can see the AP AD boutique reps here and there being super uptight about the riffraff that are now going to be coming into their stores who have no financial place in the AP store. What can I get for $1,000 is going to be the question that they will be answering for the coming months. And people are going to be turning their eyes at $25,000, $50,000, $70,000, $150,000 watches and sort of realizing how expensive these things can get. So that's not the win for AP. But it's also not just Ben Hamias from AP and Ilaria Resta doing something for shirts and giggles. For AP, it's about cultural relevance. I spoke a little bit about this the other day in the main Nico Leonard collab video I did. This idea of synergies in branding. Two brands that give each other something. And Swatch, with the collab with AP, make AP look young and look fresh and look modern and look, to some extent, self-deprecating. This is everything that someone like Patek Philippe are not. Patek is also hyper desirable to the extent that their most recent anniversary Nautilus reportedly has a $2.5 million spend requirement for a person to get an allocation. But the thing about Patek is they cultivate an air of exclusion in their exclusivity. Owning a Patek is also about who is able to get one, but the storytelling is also about who isn't able to get one. You can't get a Patek if Thierry doesn't like you. You can't get a Patek if you don't live up to some sort of objective criteria of being a serious Patek lover. If you ice out your Patek, there's a risk that Thierry is banning you from ever buying another watch. AP, though, are different. Yes, they do also require a certain level of spend, but for AP, if you have the money, they'll sell it to you. AP don't come across as embarrassed that rappers and basketball players and kick streamers wear their watches. I've got no doubt that Thierry Stern would look upon a collab like this for Patek with disdain. It would be counter to what he wants to cultivate in terms of brand identity. But not AP. They want the authenticity and the irreverence that this collab conveys because it makes them cooler. It also exposes them to those younger people and those women who like accessories. That's the synergy. Not more sold watches, but more cool factor, more youthful appeal, and more cultural relevance. They get to be talked about and they get to be desired and they don't need to lower their prices a single bit. But AP aren't even the biggest beneficiary. It's the high-end Swiss watch industry. Let me explain. There are a couple of things you need to know. For the last 20 or so years, the Swiss watch industry has been selling fewer and fewer watches. They have slowly been exiting the more affordable price points and have been moving to higher price points. That doesn't mean that cheap watches are disappearing completely. That space is just being taken over by foreign brands, so Citizen and Seiko and Casio and Orient. If you want cheap and affordable watches, those are the brands that cater to you. Overall, though, classic mechanical and quartz watches are a segment that are in decline in terms of total volumes. The reason is twofold. First is Apple Watches, Garmin's, Suntos, which are much more common, and for a lot of people, they are the go-to wrist watch. Second, people just don't wear watches as much. You don't need a watch to tell the time. You can use your phone. But it's also not just about functionality. It's also because watches as jewelry or as accessories are in competition with so many other things these days. For some, a nice watch was the way you flashed a little bit of wealth and a little bit of jewelry. Today, for a lot of younger consumers, it's not a choice of this watch or that watch. It's a choice between a watch or a high-end pair of Bose and Wilkinson's wireless headphones or some hyper trendy piece of gym gear that tells a story about you. Today, so many different things can be used as status signifiers, as jewelry, as storytelling about the owner. Quartz and mechanical watch producers are not just in competition with each other. They're in competition with a whole host of other lifestyle products. And more specifically, they are in competition with a whole lot of lifestyle accessories. Importantly, high-end lifestyle products need contemporary relevance. People don't just buy $25,000 watches because they can. They buy $25,000 watches because watches in general are something that people want. Think of it this way. The Birkin bag from Hermes. This is a bag that has a waiting list of years, just like a Daytona. It's a bag that requires a huge spend in a Hermes store before you're allowed to buy it. It's a bag that can cost tens of thousands of dollars. Why do people want that bag? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but they want it in part because people want bags. When people want something, then the upscale version of that has increased desirability. If there was some sort of hypothetical world where everybody lost interest in bags in general, then no one would care about the Birkin bag. Cheap bags are not the starting point of a funnel that eventually leads you up in price to the Birkin bag. Cheap bags convey cultural relevance. Cheap bags keep bags as a concept, as something people want. If the world only had expensive watches on the hands of a minute number of individuals, the desire for watches overall will eventually disappear. Old farts with tons of money cannot sustain cultural relevance. Old farts with money don't create desire. Normal people, the crowds, the young, they create desire. And when normal people with, relatively speaking, normal incomes want a plastic Royal Oak watch thingamabob, then watches become more desired and luxury watches become more desired. If Patek existed in a vacuum, the desire for Patek would eventually disappear. The luxury high-end industry can create desire for high-end luxury watches, but the luxury high-end watch industry is dependent on the low end for interest in watches in general. And the interest in watches in general is a prerequisite for future high-end desire. So if you're a snobbish AP owner that disdains how AP has lowered itself to the levels of the proletariat and sullied the status of your wrist candy that you have on your wrist, just remember that these watches are what ensure that your watch is also worth something in 25 years' time, because these are the kinds of watches that ensure that watches are still relevant in 25 years' time. Now, as for the pocket watch, I've already got an interest in watches, so it does nothing for me. I also know from the Moon Swatch that you spend the money, you wear it a couple of times, and then it just kind of gathers dust if it hasn't broken within a month. I am 100% not spending my money on a plastic pocket watch. My 10-year-old daughter, on the other hand, she likes it and she wants to hang one off of her bag. But I'm not spending close to $400 on a bag accessory for a 10-year-old. At the end of the day, I've got so many other watches I would rather be wearing. So I won't be buying one, but I think a lot of people will. What about you? Will you be buying one? Like, subscribe. Cheers.